That is what I believe the soul's truth is. Our soul is that student aspect of ourselves coming forward many times, I believe, to learn how to love unconditionally, learn how to get closer to that agape. And it's not coming with any nefarious intentions. It wants truth. It wants us to have access to that truth. And we know truth by how it feels in our bodies.
Welcome to the MINDTRX Podcast, where we explore breakthrough ideas on how to live your best life possible. I'm Dr. Paul Scheele, and today I'm joined by Stephanie Banks, an intuitive channel, mentor, and author whose work helps people reconnect with their soul's wisdom and innate intuition. In this episode, we explore what it really means to trust your inner knowing. Stephanie shares how right hemisphere intuition naturally leads to connection, compassion, playfulness, and creativity, and why it was designed to guide the logical, problem-solving left brain, not the other way around. We'll talk about how to quiet fear and distraction long enough to hear your subtle inner voice, how simple HeartMath, heart-brain coherence practices can bring you into receptive states in just a few minutes, and how journaling and self-observation can reveal the cycles of your inner critic. We also look at mistakes as choices that refine your path, clarifying soul's purpose as a journey of learning to love, and letting joy and ease signal when your spirit is truly leading. If you've ever wondered how to move from self-doubt to self-trust and let your spirit be your guiding force, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Hello, Stephanie. Welcome to the MINDTRX Podcast.
Hi there, Dr. Paul. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to see where our conversation meanders today.
Exactly. Well, I was delighted to get to know your work as an intuitive and as someone who teaches others to use not only their intuitive brain, but their whole brain for understanding their lives and being more effective communicators. I'd like to focus on this right hemisphere intuition that we have access to. What would you say are the big gains that a person would have if they are able to learn how to and trust their intuitive minds?
Wow. Well, we would have much better self-guidance if we were coming from the right hemisphere of the brain. It is receptive, it's intuitive, it's playful, it's creative, it's inclusive. We'd have harmony in our culture, in our societies. We would recognize, right? Can you imagine that? We would recognize one another as connected, and interconnectedness is what the right hemisphere allows for. So there's endless benefits to it. It is actually, I believe, designed to be the leader and to give instruction to the left side, which is really good at problem solving and logic and thinking things through, but isn't so great at that deep connection that all of us are craving right now. All of humanity is craving that connectivity to one another. It gives us peace. It gives us gentleness, compassion. All those things come from the right hemisphere.
Well, I love what you're saying about the power of intuition. And isn't it remarkable how we're trained to distrust it and to rely so much on the rote memory of the left hemisphere and the conscious efforts to try to rationally figure everything out. But you say something interesting. Your intuition never goes away, even though our training is such. We're just trained to direct our attention away from it. So how can we get to that place where we can have that connection once again?
Mm. We have to get quiet The intuition operates on the subtle realm. It's generally not a very shouty voice. It's not fear-based. It's just knowing. And to get to that place of inner knowing, we cannot be in fear and in distraction and in overwhelm. So this is where practices like meditation are really essential. However, let me say something about meditation. I'm not a great meditator, but I am a great channeler. So I don't want anyone to think that they have to first be good at meditating or perfect at meditating in order to be able to channel, to bring forward messages from divine energy. It's not true. I keep trying, I keep showing up to a meditative practice, but my thoughts are fast, and very rarely do I get that space that feels satisfying to me of peace and of expansiveness. So I just want people to know that because I do want to encourage more of us to enter into meditation. That is what can lead us to a state of inner stillness, even if it's a nanosecond, that counts. And that is how we're able to hear our inner voice of wisdom, our inner knowing. It operates on the very subtle level. So that's the first piece of it. The second thing I really appreciate in getting myself into that state of awareness is something called it's work from the HeartMath Institute. So it's a heart brain coherence technique. It literally only takes 2 minutes, and it's a way of bringing the mind and the heart into a coherent state. So we're not struggling so much with our thoughts and the pace of them, versus our heart and where our heart would like to be the guiding source for us. So those are my two suggestions for getting into a state where you can hear your inner knowing.
That's beautiful. And it says if we can connect with that inner knowing, we gain access to a truth that goes across all aspects of our lives. Could you say a little bit more of what you mean by that?
Yeah. So, as part of our conditioning, whether it's societal or cultural or familial or religious conditioning, we have been taught to rely on external sources of truth, right? This might be the news. I hope it's not, but it might be.
I
This might
hope
be
it's not AI and social media postings either.
correct. Yes, exactly. Sometimes it's family members, loved ones, teachers, those we might consider to be our leaders. But actually, I believe we're meant to be internally guided. We are our own truth. Our essence is here. Our souls are here to live out a variety of experiences and paths that bring us closer to our own true beliefs. So if a belief is a thought that you just think enough times to believe it to be true, and we can change our thoughts, which we can, then that means we can unlearn things that are no longer true for us, the way we are in the world, perhaps, or what we have come to believe about other people, other groups of people, the world at large. And we can come back into something that feels much more loving, much more connected, much more compassionate. And that is what I believe the soul's truth is. Our soul is that student aspect of ourselves coming forward many times, I believe, to learn how to love unconditionally, learn how to get closer to that agape. And it's not coming with any nefarious intentions. It wants truth. It wants us to have access to that truth. And we know truth by how it feels in our bodies.
Well, and I love that you describe it as a knowing, and that knowing could be auditory, it could be
Mhm.
visual, it could be kinesthetic. We could step into that truth in a lot of ways. And when we hear it, oftentimes we'll get that goosebump feeling. It's as if our soul has stepped in to the physical as opposed to just kind of watching it from behind all the time. It steps in and oh, yes, we hear it, we know it, that's the truth. And everybody obviously needs to find their own way to that state of receptivity. You mentioned your way as being HeartMath,
Mhm.
as one of the ways, being in that receptive state of being. I oftentimes will be still and just hold the question that it is that I'm inquiring about. And as quickly as the question is formed in my mind, the answer seems to come rushing toward me, flooding into me. It's never seemed difficult to me that way. And I will say that I've had a long practice of meditation and so on. I recommend people use the M wave or the inner balance device from HeartMath just as a way to get into that state of coherence. Could you suggest a way that our listener could just right now pause enough to be in that receptive state?
I'd love to. And I love the inner balance. I use that as well. For those of us that are visual, that's a very helpful tool to see the graphs of how we are in coherence or not. So I will just borrow a quick practice, the quick coherence technique from HeartMath, and we'll do it together shortly, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. So if you are safe and comfortable doing so, go ahead and gently close your eyes. And if you feel good doing so, you can place one or two hands over your heart. And you're just going to connect to your breath in being aware of it, breathing in and out in a rhythm that feels easeful and natural to you. And as you breathe, imagine that you are breathing in through the front of your heart. And as you exhale, imagine that you are breathing out through the back of your heart. In through the front of your heart and out through the back of your heart. And let's just share a few quiet breaths with this imagining and with this pattern. And while you allow for your breathing just to maintain itself in that way, in your imagination, call to mind something or someone or some place that brings you so much joy, so much love, so much peace. It could be a beloved human, a beloved animal companion, your favorite place in the natural world, but see it in your mind's eye. And allow yourself to send all this loving energy directly to that person or place or thing. Feel the beauty and the light that comes to you from them. And now, keeping this feeling within you and within your heart, let's take 3 more breaths together. In through the front of your heart, out through the back of your heart. And when you're ready, let your hands rest in your lap and let your eyes gently open. And feel what you feel. I always feel different when I do this.
Yes, that's lovely. Thank you for that. So, an important aspect of this is that it doesn't need to take a long time. A couple of minutes just in that heart lock breathing that HeartMath teaches is really all that's necessary. And when speaking with Dr. Debbie Rosman about HeartMath, people were thinking, well, I should wear the monitor as I'm doing all these activities. No, 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 no. Use it for 2 to 4 minutes and then go into your activities. You don't have to work at that meditation. Similarly, I had a meditation teacher when I was a young man, and the disciplines they gave from Raja Yoga tradition were really quite intense. And at the end of his teaching, he said, forget about all that. It's just 2, 3 minutes every couple hours during the day. Drop into that place of silence.
Mhm.
And I think that it is when we bring the mind to silence that we're most receptive, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I think for me, it's the only time I can be receptive.
And for me, there's also a discernible difference in the quality of my internal voice. So, for example, when I'm in a kind of an urgent or anxious state and I need to get something done and I hear my inner voice, it's kind of commanding and sort of
Mhm.
insistive. And when I hear the voice of what I think both you and I are talking about, that inner wisdom, there's this calmness to it.
Mhm.
There
Mhm.
is this spaciousness to it. There's this grace to it. And it's very compassionate. It's very loving. And it's everything's going to be okay kind of sense to it. How about for you? When is it that you're connecting to that inner wisdom?
For me, it's everything you described, and then I would add in a playfulness
Oh, nice.
because whether it's my soul or what I call my spirit guides, we have a great sense of humor, which is a very handy thing to have in today's everything, today's state of being. So it's what helps me to not take myself so seriously. It's what helps me to see the humor in things that maybe aren't actually seeming humorous to others, but there is always an underlying joy and an underlying playfulness if we're willing to see it.
Nice. I love that. And I have had that inner wise voice say to me, don't take yourself so seriously. And I am super playful out in the world. And if you ever see me on stage, I mean, people just love the joy that I radiate when I'm speaking. And yet my internal world is kind of stern and a critical parent and, all of that. And discovering that shift,
Mhm.
being able to shift into that inner place is it's lovely. Now, one of the things that you state is that the hard part of all this is learning how to get out of your own way so that these messages can come through with the highest clarity and vibration. When you say get yourself out of the way, I can think of kind of three things: me, myself, and I. Me being my physical, this is me.
Mhm.
Myself being my persona, my personality, and all of my mental model of the world. And then I, me, myself, and I. And I is that I am presence. So when you say get yourself out of the way, what are you referring to exactly?
I strive to set aside my own personal biases and judgments, of which I have many. And in order to be an effective channel for others, or really even for myself, I need to set that elsewhere so that I can be present to the more that I don't see, that I'm not naturally aware of as I express myself through personality. I ask for help with this because I do feel like it's something that I need my spirit team to support. I always intend for it and request that anything I might be bringing into this space unconsciously, subconsciously, that has to do with my personal understanding of the world, which is incredibly limited, or my belief system or that which I have not yet been exposed to or learned, all of that be neatly boxed up and put off to the side so that when I enter into the channeling and receptive place, I am allowed to perceive more than what my mind and my personal journey has shown me thus far. And when I'm honest about that, when I'm serious and intentional about that, I learn so much more than when I just quickly drop in to grab a quick message for myself or, think that I can do this on the fly. It's a different quality of connection that I can feel when I really intend and really commit to the willingness to set all of that aside and sort of lose the personality of Stephanie or what Stephanie believes in the process.
That's that's gorgeous. And to watch you do that, what you did is you grabbed this box and you pushed it down to your left.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we have internal dialogue. And so, whatever voice you use for your internal dialogue, you're really saying, not that, but something greater coming through. And I love that idea that we have a power and a presence expressing through us as us. And there's a difference between that presence and power that we're here presencing versus what we're trying to get done in the world, right? My
Yeah.
goals and my intentions and everything else. And I really appreciate the subtle nature of that. Now, you talk about a dichotomy. I like to talk about it as a continuum from self-doubt to self-trust. And yeah, we can doubt ourselves and our abilities. And I always wonder when I'm channeling if it's going to work this time, because to my conscious mind, it makes no sense, right? But this idea that I find most people will live in a comfort zone between the two extremes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering what you've learned about helping to move that set point a little further toward self-trust.
Mm.
What are some of the practices or exercises we could engage in to have more confidence in that interior knowing and the trust that the wisdom coming through is that higher wisdom?
Mm. Well, for me, I started to see almost a cyclical nature of when my inner critic would be at her height. And I started to notice it for me as a woman, it was cyclical, in sync with other cycles that women have. So for anyone else that's not woman identified, you still go through cycles. Sometimes it's with the moon cycle, sometimes it's others, but this is a really important thing, I believe, for us to have some awareness around. And the way to have awareness around that is to be a very good observer, a non-judgmental observer of when you are at the height of your self-criticism, when you are at the height of your, like, considering yourself to be on the lowest rung, right? This is when my inner critic just has everything negative to say about everything that I do. And I notice
So,
that,
so the I'm worthless. This
yes,
is never going to work. I'm unloved. I have no resources, time, energy, but nothing. Yeah. Okay. I
that's
get it.
it. That's
Yeah.
her. You've met her.
Well, it's him. Yeah. I've seen him.
Exactly. So when I discovered that were times where this peaked for me, and I discovered this through documentation. I'm a big fan of data. I know you are too. And when we write things down, you can call it journaling. That's pretty much what it was. If we take stock of what our mental state is and how our thoughts are generally running, what our beliefs in that moment or that day are about ourselves, it'll give you really good information over time. And over time, I was able to see, wow, about every 30 days, I don't want to be anywhere near my my mind, my thoughts, my beliefs about myself. So I could start to do like a preparation for that. The thing is that the inner critic is of great value. So I don't want to give the impression that we are to rail against it or ignore it. It's what allows for refinement. I want to be refining all the time, right? This is part of my growth and my appreciation for that which is more clear, more true. So there's a place for our inner critic. It's again like the left hemisphere, right hemisphere. It's not meant to lead us. That's a very despairing place to operate from. It's like climbing a mountain with an enormous backpack full of bricks and no water, and it's impossible to feel good and do well and feel free with the inner critic just raining down on us. But if we listen and we're in balance with it, it can give us information that if applied properly and not obsessively, but just gently, can actually refine what we want to achieve and illuminate more of the path for us. Gaining confidence in this way, it's a slow, steady process. It doesn't happen quickly. And I'll tell you what else, it does not happen from the external. True confidence, I believe, is going to be what comes from our trust of our inner knowing. And that comes through practice. And that comes for me through taking data, writing things down, seeing where things unfolded in a beautiful way, and where I trusted and where things didn't. And I mistrusted.
That's nice. The distinction that you're making, I say there's a difference between competence and confidence, and confidence
Mhm.
should come after developing competence. And I also love what you're saying about that critical mind is judgment, and judgment is our greatest creation. Moving from using judgment instead of self-criticism to self-discernment and being able to make finer distinctions is really the key. In teaching remote viewing, for example, people who have never done it before and they're scanning a body, their hands will go down the spine and they'll stop at a spot and they'll continue down. They'll go down and stop at a spot and go down. And they'll say, well, yeah, I didn't get anything. I said, well, hang on just a moment. I'm watching you. Your hands are stopping right at the spot. What do you expect? Well, I just figured that was my imagination. I said, of course it's your imagination. And we're trying to discern what your imagination is trying to tell you, teach you, explore. So just go there to that spot and explore it a little bit. And so, again, with fun, we come into a greater discernment of some of these subtle signals because we're not used to listening and feeling into those subtle distinctions that mind can give us.
Yes, yes to all of that. And I got the chills when you said, of course it's your imagination. Because when I'm teaching classes and I ask, what is your greatest fear about channeling? Because most people don't do it because there's something that's been taught to them about it being scary or out of control or whatever it is. And a lot of people will say, well, I'm afraid I might just be making this up. And I always say,
Yes.
oh, good for you, because we are. We're making it all up all the time. The imagination is perhaps arguably the greatest gift that we got from Source, right? Like, this is what allows us to create everything that has ever been created. So we celebrate the imagination. And I believe channeling comes through that imagination.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're moving from self doubt to self trust, that is one of the doorways we're going to have to step through.
Yeah.
Like we have to get over that fear of making a mistake. And there was something that you stated. It's this idea of clarifying one's soul purpose. And you also talked about this idea that what would you do with your precious life if you weren't afraid to make mistakes? Could you Talk to me about the soul's perception of our journey through this life and our own inherited view about what this life is all about.
Yes. So I personally believe that our souls come forward repeatedly in order to learn to love more fully, more completely, more, I'll say perfectly, but that's a highly charged word, isn't it? The whole perfection. But we do so by mostly, I feel, through relationships, how we relate to others, how we relate to ourselves, how we relate to the natural world. This is how we develop love. This is how we develop appreciation, and compassion. So, if our soul is here for the purpose of loving more, loving better, loving more purely, and we're calling in relationship oftentimes challenges because nobody learns anything when everything's easy. We have to be challenged, right? That's where we actually grow. We actually learn something. So we play all of that out. And ultimately, when my soul is complete with this journey and I get the opportunity to do a review, I feel, I believe, and we'll see if I'm right or not, that I'm going to scan back and it's going to be those that I touched or was touched by, those who were in my sphere, who at pivotal points in my life, and maybe I didn't even know that they were pivotal points. Stood in for me, with me, up for me, connected to me, had reciprocity with me. And this is going to be something that I weigh as whether or not this was a lifetime in which I achieved what I came here to do.
Mm.
So ultimately, at the core, I feel we're all here for the same purpose, to learn to love. And some of us have greater challenges set before us than others. We might be born into a part of the world where love is scarce and where resources are scarce. And that is, that's a very difficult, challenging thing to rise to, but we see people do it all the time. And then the second part of your question, I have forgotten. What was it?
This idea of our clarifying our soul's purpose and what would it be like to live a life where we weren't afraid to make mistakes?
Yes. So the thing I feel about mistakes is that they are just choices. So if we take the judgment out of wrong versus right, like if we pull that whole evaluatory aspect out of it and we make a choice, and the choice turns out to feel bad to us or bring harm to another, we can call that a mistake, but really it's a choice and we can learn from that and make a different choice next time. I think where a lot of us get trapped is in the right wrong thinking. Keeps us small. It keeps us in a place where we fear being wrong, and therefore we don't take the risks of sharing our hearts with the world, of sharing our beliefs, our learnings, our teachings, whatever we have that could be of value. I wouldn't be channeling for others if I stayed hung up on right versus wrong, because I am probably always getting something wrong. Right? There's just no, how can we ever know for sure? Even science is always changing. So how can we ever know for sure when something is right? So trusting how it feels in the heart and in the body, that's my litmus test for truth.
Beautiful. As a scientist and as a researcher, anytime I hear someone say, well, research proves that, no, research doesn't prove anything. It gives us an idea of the likelihood that something operates that way, but there's no proof positive in the world out there. So if we take the stigma off of making the wrong decision, and interestingly, a lot of studies have been done on very gifted psychics, and the idea that they're 85% accurate is off the charts amazing, right? So it's not a perfect thing. It's greater degrees of clarity, perhaps. So, in our journey through this life of gaining greater clarity, you say a very lovely proposition to choose your spirit as your guiding force.
Mhm.
So, as we kind of wrap up our delightful conversation today, which I'm super resonant with, uh, talk to me about making that choice. How, in the lives of the people that you've guided, do they get to that?
Well, that's a big one. How do they get to the place where they are ultimately trusting themselves, you're asking?
Trusting that spirit
Is
is their
leading.
guiding
Yeah,
force. Now, let me
yeah.
set a little bit of a context. My teacher I studied with for a long time said we live in two phases. The first phase, we're victims of the world as we see it, and we
Mhm.
grow up to become socialized to that human history. But at some point, we realize, wait, there's more going on here than meets the eye. And at that point, our soul begins guiding us to those further resources like you, like me, that can help someone open up to the greater power and presence that they are and start to live wholeheartedly and playing full out in the world, right?
Yeah.
So it's that transition between phase one and phase two. What in your teaching and helping others helps to get that tipping point so someone really does see, you know what? It's not about me. There is the spirit within that is guiding me to my further next steps.
Yeah, to make it simple for people, I would break it down into how things feel. That's kind of how I gauge when I am on a path. That's the one for me. And so when I started to feel more excitement and more joy and more passion for, say, the spiritual body of work that I was beginning to learn about, that's how I knew it was for me. When I felt like I was carrying that heavy backpack of bricks up the mountain and really efforting so hard and working harder but not achieving or not receiving the results I was looking for. That's how I knew that wasn't actually my path. And I don't mean to oversimplify and say if it's easy it's for you, but it's kind of part of that. If you find things are just so difficult, heavy and hard, maybe you're looking or spending a little too much time on that path. Maybe you have an entire team of energetic beings who are oh so patiently waiting for you to invite in more pleasure, more joy, more open-heartedness, and they can show you a different path. I don't believe we're ever alone. And so I would never recommend anyone try anything with the mindset that, okay, just have to master this one task and then I will be at this point. No, I'm always in the place of learning. I said to you before we started recording, please teach me too, because you have so much of a wealth of information and insight that I do not, simply because we're walking different paths. So that's what I encourage people towards. I know that for many, it can seem impossible to set aside time for joy. And yet I'm going to say it's necessary. It's absolutely necessary. It's where you can do your greatest love work is from that place. It ripples out everywhere. So this requires us to know what creates joy in us. And for all of us, it's a little different. For me, it's animals and nature. And for other people, it might be something else.
Excellent. So if your heart's not in it, but you're efforting, you
Mhm.
can tell this
Yeah.
is this is not the path.
Yes.
But even if you do something badly at
Mhm.
first, but absolutely adore it, there is an effortlessness to it. And I think taking time to contemplate, is this my life's purpose, then is also worthy of our attention. You did mention journaling as being an essential exercise or practice for you. I have encouraged people as well. I've had some people who are professional teachers of journaling on this podcast. And I do want to say that any activity of self-reflection, especially when it's non-condemning, when it's non-critical, when it's accepting and allowing and recognizing who you are and what you're going through, that's the way to go. And in terms of practices we could engage in, HeartMath, all of that, how about, just kind of as a final idea, putting your toe in the water and doing some channeling sometime? Like a person could say, well, I don't know, but let me go inside and ask. Do you
Yeah,
recommend that sort of
I,
thing to
I
people?
do. What I will say as a disclaimer is I don't recommend channeling for yourself when you have a high attachment to your
Yes.
answer.
And that's something we see over and over again. They say, this is so weird. It works great when I do it with others, but it doesn't work at all for me. So yeah, that's that detached
Mhm.
awareness. Real good distinction there.
Yeah, and that's actually a really quick way to lose confidence and think that you're a very poor channeler is to channel something for yourself. Like I will tell people in my classes, do not hold your pendulum and say, should I marry Johnny? Like, don't do that. There's no way for you to be neutral about that question. And if you get a yes and you marry Johnny and you have a terrible marriage, then you're going to blame yourself and your intuition. And it was not wrong. You just didn't ask the question in the right way. The question
Yes.
in the right way would be, does it serve the highest good of all to continue my relationship with Johnny? That's just an example of a better question. So when you channel for yourself or when you experiment with it, pay attention to the language of your questions and do so with less charged ideas or responses that you're looking for, and you can build more confidence in that way.
Beautiful. Thank you. We'll remove all self-doubt and build that self-trust. Thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. Same.
Peace and blessings. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Stephanie Banks. You can learn more about her work, schedule an intuitive channeling session, or explore her courses at www.soulinsight.com. And now, in the second part of the podcast, it's just you and me. I'll show you how to use paraliminal audio sessions in the MINDTRX app to support and deepen the core themes we explored today. If you're new to paraliminals, these guided audio sessions engage your whole mind, conscious and non-conscious, in about 20 minutes. They help you quiet the inner noise, release blocks, and align with your inner wisdom. In this next segment, I've identified 5 key areas from our dialogue with Stephanie: finding and trusting your intuition, quieting the mind and being receptive, clearing blocks to your inner truth, living your life's purpose, and finding your spirit connection. For each, I'll recommend 1 or 2 specific paraliminals that you can use to bring these insights into your daily life. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back. This is the follow-on to my dialogue with Stephanie Banks, where we're talking about trusting our intuition and using that inner knowing to create the life that we're choosing to live. And there are some great paraliminals that can assist in all of the dimensions that we had an opportunity to explore in our dialogue together. And I've broken it into 5 different areas. The first, finding and trusting your intuition. The second, quieting the mind and being receptive. The third, clearing the blocks to that inner truth that's available to us. The fourth is living your life's purpose. And the fifth is finding the spirit connection for that interior guidance. So let's get into it. First and foremost, finding and trusting your intuition. The paraliminal for this is intuition amplifier. Drop the mic, leave the stage, yay, because that's exactly what that paraliminal was designed to do for you, is really to help you recognize this intuitive capacity that you have within you. All of us do. As Stephanie says, we've just directed our attention away from it. And as we choose and choicefully turn toward our intuition, we can get better and better at using it. Better and better means trusting it, removing self-doubt, calming the mind, being receptive, and so on. So all of that's very much available. The second area is quieting the mind and being receptive. And certainly if you're not practiced in just allowing the mind to be still, the deep relaxation paraliminal is terrific. And it's one of the longest paraliminal titles. It's close to 30 minutes where you're just going into states of peace and deep physical, mental, and emotional relaxation. So that's going to be a great practice to develop the ability to very quickly drop into that deeper state. The second paraliminal that can be helpful in quieting the mind and being receptive is called focus and concentration. So focus and concentration really says, hey, what's important to you? And let's bring our awareness to it. When it becomes central, or as I say, instead of on the back burner, more on the front burner and available to you, you're going to actually develop more skills in that area. I mentioned during the dialogue this idea of treating yourself as a learner, not as an expert at this, but that we're all learning to make finer distinctions, or we're all learning to move away from self-doubt and more towards self-trust. So those two paraliminals, deep relaxation and focus and concentration. The third area is the idea of clearing blocks to your inner knowing or your truth. And I think that the self-esteem supercharger is really good. And this is based on what came out of the dialogue with Stephanie, that oftentimes it's the fear of making a mistake that prevents us from trying something else. And so it becomes the very thing that blocks us. And if we let go of our fear of making a mistake, or recognizing that mistakes, to the point Stephanie was making, if we view our mistakes as opportunities for refining our distinctions and making clearer choices, then we're in a good space. That's the essence of a paraliminal called self-esteem supercharger. It states that we're always doing the best that our current awareness permits. So if you give yourself permission to be a learner and to not fear what learning entails, then we're going to get better and better. And self-esteem is self-love. So it's going to be quite helpful in a lot of domains. The second paraliminal here is called the new history generator, where we can look at different areas of our lives, things that were blocks for us, and we can frame them differently. We can view them from other perspectives and realize they're not here to stop us. They're really here for our growth and development, to become more loving, as Stephanie says, toward ourselves and toward others in the world. The fourth area is about living your life's purpose. And there are two paraliminals here I think are helpful. One is called conscious time, where you're really deciding how you're going to live today. very helpful. When you have a sense of what brings you the most joy, what is at the center of your life's purpose and your life's passion, then you can live into it by making a decision to do so. Conscious time is all about that. The second paraliminal here is called self-discipline. In other words, becoming a disciple of, a follower of your highest good, your soul's purpose. So when we live each day with the resolution that I'm going to channel my energies in this positive direction, we're going to be much more effective at doing so. So living your life's purpose, it's conscious time and self-discipline. Now, the fifth and final area that I think may be helpful to look at is about this finding the spirit connection within. Stephanie talked a bit about the angelic presence that's all around us. I actually chose not to get into a lot of that right now, but I'm totally with her on that. I've gotten a lot of guidance from spirit guides and helpers in other dimensions, and there's a lot to it. Certainly, a very simple way of thinking of this is if you take your past self and you take your future self and you take your present self and you get together with all three of you, it's called self-love. And you are going to be holding space for a greater presence and power that is animating your life to show up and be there for you. And it's this idea of presencing, being present and sensing that greater intelligence, that soul's wisdom that's always trying to guide you forward in your life. It's here for you. As my teachers have taught me, as I teach my students as well, we can be attentive to it and responsive with it to take each next new step that's going to bring us to the life we choose to create, the life that we're here to live fully into. So self-love, paraliminal, really helpful. And the other one is joy. It seemed that in my dialogue with Stephanie, joy was a real hot button for her. And I can't disagree at all. Passion or joy, that's what's on our hearts and minds to live into. The more we're doing it, more congruently, more coherently we're living our lives. And that means we're connected to that greater power, presence, source that is here to guide us in this lifetime. So those two, finding the spirit connection, would be self-love and joy. Hope you had a great time with this conversation with a beautiful soul, helping a lot of people discover that greater trust within oneself, that intuitive power that's within. Thanks so much for being here. Look forward to seeing you again in a future podcast. Bye for now. Thanks for joining me today. I applaud your willingness to maximize your potential. You can easily use the paraliminal audio sessions in the MINDTRX app to stimulate your non-conscious mind, that is your inner mind, to reduce any resistance in your life and propel you toward the success you want. Go to www.mindtrx.com/go. These amazing audio tools have helped millions, and I encourage you to bring them into your life today. Be sure to be back for more episodes of the MINDTRX Podcast. You'll find insightful conversations with authors, experts, and thought leaders, all devoted to improving your life's experience. And if you found value in this episode, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Your support helps us keep the momentum of transformation going. Thank you again for being here on our MINDTRX podcast.